I am Nicolo from SET, namely from Brand Awareness Project, and together with Christine, who is the program manager of SET Padova. I'm taking for granted that you all know SET Padova, but probably we will need a brief explanation. It's a student-led association based in Padova. It was born to connect students with the faculty and the university in broader term. And then kept evolving and keeps still evolving in order to train students and to anyway train future young policymakers to be active in social, youth, and environmental policy making. Anyway, to cut a long story short, today's meeting aims to giving you some actual insights from young professionals from different two different fields on still within the international relations arena, because they are two interns from the European Commission, and so to have some insights on how to transition from university to work and even further ahead of that, and how to balance social life and private life with job, which might be stressful, and also other tips that may pop up also from your questions if you have.
My name is Adrien. I'm 26. Now I'm working at the European Commission. Most of my life I studied in Paris, in Sorbonne universities. I started studying political science and philosophy. And then with all the courses that I had, I started to become more and more interested in the European Union. So I did a master's in European affairs. It was at Sorbonne University, so I had a lot of theoretical courses, but also it was nice because I managed to have a nice internship in the French Ministry of Interior, where I worked on basically on refugee protection, border management, and many other topics related to migration policy at the EU level. Then after that, I decided to do a second master's because I felt that I was not really prepared to start my basically my career, my professional life, because I felt that I needed some, I don't know, insight or some skills, and that I could deepen my knowledge on the EU and on its working, on its policies. So I decided to apply to the College of Europe, and I was accepted at the end, and I spent 1 year in Poland, in the Natolin campus of the College of Europe, where I studied as well European affairs, but focusing this time on the EU external action, the EU foreign policy, and also the EU neighborhood policy. So it was really interesting, a nice experience, because comparing it to my first master's, it was much more balanced because we had a lot of theoretical courses, but also many trainings, a lot of guests intervening on campus or telling us about their life story, their career. So it was really, really interesting. And also I had more time for myself at that time because I was basically only a student on a campus. Whereas before in my studies, I was a student and also I was working in parallel. So it was quite intense. So my time at the College of Europe was really nice and I really enjoyed it. But then the thing is that when I was there was, as for everybody else, but there was the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. So then after to look for a job, it was a bit of a stress. So I was a bit stressed out in the beginning. But thanks to the internship that I did in the French Ministry of Interior, I've managed to get basically a contract of 1 year in the ministry, still working on European affairs and EU migration policy. So that was really an interesting first professional experience, not as an intern or a trainee, but really as an agent. So it was really interesting, and I learned a lot of skills, even though it was really intense. Because despite COVID, there was still a lot to do on migration and with the new proposal of the Commission and everything. So migration was really complicated also because of the restriction in place with the COVID-19. But I realized that I really wanted to have the Brussels experience. So after 1 year and the end of my contract, I decided to apply for the Blue Book traineeship, where I had the pleasure to meet Erika and Felix here. So it was a really nice experience. I worked on the visa policy in the Directorate General for Migration and Home Affairs. So it was interesting to discover all the issues related to visas. So the difficulties with issuing visa in times of the crisis, but also it was also interesting to discover all the legislations, but also the cooperation with all the countries in the world on visa. So it was for me a really nice experience. But at the end of my my traineeship, I didn't get the chance to stay in my unit. So I wanted to stay in Brussels, and I decided to apply to many other things, including the commission. And I got this interim position in Digineer, where I'm working on an instrument of cooperation with third countries. Basically, we're organizing events in the neighboring countries, be it the southern neighborhoods, so all the countries around the Mediterranean and in Africa, and all the countries also in the neighborhood east, so Ukraine, Moldova, etc. So this is a really nice experience, but it's just that my contract now is a bit, it's a short-term contract, so I don't know how long I'm going to stay in the commission, but it's still a very interesting experience. And now I'm just trying my best to stay in the EU bubble and in Brussels as long as I can.
So I'm Felix. I am French as well, but I think Adrien and I have quite different backgrounds. See, I say I'm French, but that's only really on my passport because I never really lived in France. I was lucky enough to grow up in the Middle East, in the UAE specifically, after which I went to high school in the UK, or finished high school in the UK, which is where sort of I got my international relations sort of overview, sort of the realization that I'd come from a place which was rather multicultural in the broadest sense of the term, which meant that I was then very interested in staying within that sort of realm. And so I'd always looked for opportunities to stay within that realm, and diplomacy was something that had always interested me. And as I got studying in Lyon in France, I was doing political science and sociology and realized that actually what interested me more wasn't so much the diplomacy aspect of it, but rather the positioning of states between one another. And so I got much more into international security and tried to focus on that within my international relations sort of degrees. So I did an exchange then at the University of Pennsylvania in the US. And I was able to sort of focus then more on the international security before I went to do a master's in international relations. So up until then, it was rather smooth sailing for me in terms of sort of the process of education. But it's after that it got a little bit complicated to find work specifically, because I was lucky enough to find rather quickly an internship for 3 months in Kiev back in 2018. 2019. But it never led to anything concrete after that. And I had thought, sort of following the academic steps that I had, that I would sort of find a job rather easily and sort of develop some skills and some connections. But sort of coming out, and I don't know if a lot of you are in this sort of situation or have this feeling that the diplomas I did hadn't given me concrete skills other than being able to analyze the situation properly and being able to sort of get a set of data, make sense of it, and sort of expose it. But as to the day-to-day operations, it was very difficult for me to defend what I could actually do. And so I struggled quite a bit to find relevant work to my studies, and then went off to do a bunch of different things in Amsterdam and in Berlin, where I stayed for 1.5 years doing literally customer support on the computer for 8 hours a day. So I was in front of the computer, typing away, responding to chats for 1.5 years, which I would say was a really good experience, honestly, because the team was excellent. But also it was a company that was small enough and technologically advanced enough to actually understand that the people who are in the customer support roles don't necessarily want to stay there, and we're offering methods of getting out and promotions, and showing that there was a clear way to sort of go higher up in the company. And during that whole time, I was trying to integrate the European institutions, which is not something that I had really focused on when I was studying. because my worldview was more broad than sort of the European Union. To be honest, I'd always considered that maybe I would try to join NATO, OSCE, UN, and sort of large organizations like that. And the EU sort of popped up because I realized that there was more access for young people within the EU as opposed to these other institutions. And so tried to get the Blue Book traineeship for 3 years, actually. And I just sort of tried and tried and tried again until the day where I got a call from my supervisor in my unit at DG Home, so Migration and Home Affairs with Adrien, and started in October of last year. And that unit is taking care specifically of the funding instrument for research and innovation in security within Cluster 3 of Horizon Europe. And so Cluster 3 is that aspect of internal security research within the European Union. And so we connect with a lot of researchers and scientists and stakeholders who will try to facilitate the lives of policemen, border guards, first responders, monitoring services for natural catastrophes, human-caused catastrophes, etc., and ensure that over the next 7 to 14 years, we'll have some new technologies to help out with that sort of very serious topic. Now I was lucky enough to stay on as an intérimaire up until now. My contract ends officially on the 31st of July, so I would say that my career path is still not quite set. Going back to what I was saying about the concrete skills, it was only really after I was able to work in that company in customer support that I was able to say concretely, hey, I can do this and this, I have a good relation with people, I can actually concretely understand what the clear objectives of the company are without necessarily being in the company, and I'm able to defend my personality in front of an interviewer who might want to give me a job at some point.
You can explain a little bit what's the difference between intérimaire, Blue Book, and contract agent, because maybe you are not familiar with that and can be useful in case you are deciding to apply for a career in the EU bubble and more specifically in the EU institution.
If you are planning on integrating the EU institutions, I would say the traineeships propositions are maybe some of the easiest ways you can get at least your foot in the door, because you have a 5-month guarantee of working with the institutions, and there are multiple options. So the Blue Book traineeship is specifically for interns with the European Commission, but then you also have opportunities for internships with the European Parliament. And after that, it really depends on how well you get along with your unit and if you enjoyed the job that you did there. There was also, I would say, a good opportunity to integrate the institutions if you contact your local MEP and ask if they have any jobs going, because that is one of the most efficient ways I've seen of people finding opportunities there in the Parliament. With regards to the Commission, there is something called the CAST, which is a sort of set of exams. To dumb it down, I guess just IQ test that to ensure that you know a little bit about the European Union and that you can count, and you will have to pass these, and then you get given sort of a grade, which will give you access to a temporary contract. So these range from FG function group 1 to function group 4. And these are the ideal jobs that you want in the Commission. Now, the thing with those is that they're limited to 6 years within the Commission, but they're also quite rare. FG3 seems to be the most common one within the Commission. And those are typically put in place if the Commission isn't able to find officials with the actual full qualifications to take that job up for, the foreseeable future. In the cases that the Commission isn't able to find people immediately with those qualifications to fill those jobs, they will set out calls for what they call intérimaires, which are month-by-month contracts with some of the interim agencies in Brussels. So you can sign up to Randstad, for example, which is where I'm at, and you can let Randstad know, hey, I'm interested in working with the European Commission. Once you've done that, you can then reach out using the EU Who Is Who website. I'll put a link in the chat, and sort of find a unit that you would be interested in. look at the organigram, look at who's the head of unit, send them an email, send them your CV, let them know you're interested, and possibly they could have a job for you. Now, of course, in a lot of these cases, they would like to know you first. And so it is easier, of course, to get this sort of job if you were a blue book first and you were able to spread your network a little bit within your DG and within others, with other blue books that you might meet. But it's always worth, putting yourself out there as much as possible, at least with the institutions, because it is quite a, like Adrien said, it is a bubble, and it is quite a tightly knit group. So to get yourself in there, you really need to sort of force it.
I don't know if maybe you want to add something more, maybe also about the parliament, because I know that when we are talking like that, just interrupt if you don't maybe understand something, because it's possible, because from outside it looks more complicated than what it is, to be safe. Because even for me, when I approached the bubble for the first time, it was super complicated. But once you are inside, like, you see it's easier than what it seems. So maybe Adri, if you want to add something.
For sure. On the commission, I think that Felix said it all, so I don't have anything to add. But regarding the parliament, it's just the same principle. Basically, you have what they call the Schuman traineeship. So it's a 5 months traineeship in the European Parliament. So you're not going to be working with an MEP, a member of the European Parliament, a deputy, basically in itself. But you're going to be working with the committee, so the different committees that the parliament has. So it can be the committee on foreign affairs, the committee on, on development, on trade, or whatever. I think they have 20 or 25 committees in the parliament. So basically, you can have this opportunity to have this traineeship in the European Parliament. It's a nice way to basically extend your network, to meet people, and also, after this traineeship, you will be you may be able to get a longer contract as a parliamentary assistant, working with a member of the European Parliament or with a committee, because you also have assistants that are working not for a committee, but for the political group in the parliament, because the parliament is a bit complicated. It's a political structure with basically the political parties from all the the EU member states countries, but from the EU member states, sorry. But you also have the administration of the parliament, and you also have these structures with different committees and different roles. It might be a bit complicated to understand, but what I would advise is just to have a look at the website of the European Parliament, because it's quite well explained and not with too many details. But basically, this is an opportunity that is interesting. The only difference with the Blue Book is that when you apply for a Schuman traineeship, you apply for a position. Whereas for the Blue Book, the process is really long, but you don't apply at first for a position. You apply for a Directorate General. So basically, one of the structures, the main structures of the Commission. But you don't know if you're going to be working with this specific person on this specific topic in the beginning. Because as I said, the process can take, I think it takes 9 months or something like that. I don't really remember, guys, but it's really long. So you have different stages, and then afterwards, if you manage to be to come to the final stage, you can start to lobby to work with the unit that you want on this specific topic. That can be, I don't know, security, law enforcement, culture policy. It depends on the Directorate General. But for the Parliament, it's a bit different. Also, you have this opportunity to directly have traineeship with the member of the European Parliament. Basically, what you can do for that is just send emails to the members of the Parliament. On the website of the Parliament, you have all the members of the Parliament with their email address. So you can just basically send an email with your CV and explain what you're doing, your work experiences if you have some, and then maybe you'll get the opportunity to get a traineeship with a member of the Parliament, which is also a very interesting opportunity. But it really depends on what you want, because for the EU institutions, as Felix said, the traineeships are the best option to get in and to try to stay on the long term after your traineeship, I mean. But it's just that the Commission is much more on the policy making, on basically creating legislation. It's an administration, whereas the Parliament is more political. and it's more about basically representing the different the people and the EU member states and the people of Europe. You also have the opportunity to have traineeship in the Council of the EU. It's a bit different as well because it's even more complicated to get a traineeship in the Council of the EU because they have a limited amount of space. Basically, I think they can hire 100 trainee for each session. So it's not a lot, but then you'll be working with the council, so basically on the EU negotiation, so the negotiation with all the member states on different pieces of legislation. And it's basically going to be about all the negotiations. So it's going to be attending meetings, reporting on meetings and everything. So it can be also an interesting opportunity to enter the EU bubble, as I said. And what is interesting with also the traineeship is that even if you started you were a trainee for the European Parliament, you can afterward also try to be an intérimaire, to try to get a contract agent position in the Commission, because when they know that you know how it works and how the internal procedures are going and functioning, that they will think of you and they will be interested by your CV, because they know that you know how this whole administration is working, because that's also the problem with the EU institutions. I mean, I'm really interested, and I studied for that, so that was one of my main interests. But I have to say that it's quite complicated to understand how it works before being a trainee. Or I don't know, how was your experience, Felix and Erika? But for me, that was the case. I mean, even if I had 2 masters in European affairs, understanding the concrete functioning of an institution is quite complicated. Also because you have all these internal procedures, this cooperation with many services and agencies of the EU. So it's quite a complicated issue. But I don't know what we can do. I mean, if you have more questions on that, I guess that you can contact me or Felix or Erika via email or whatever. We can give our contact details afterwards if you have more questions, because it's also quite complicated to understand just like that.
Yeah,
but it is.
Yeah, maybe I wanted to add just one thing, Felix, that it's also why it makes this position very competitive, is that you actually have a real salary compared to other traineeship positions.
True.
So, and they are also open to non-EU students, like non-EU people, not only students. So I know that because I'm saying that because I know from my background that the Master in Human Rights has also non-European students. So this can also be important. The place for people non-EU countries are of course limited, are very few, but there are. So it's also possible for non-EU people to apply for this kind of traineeship. I know that, for example, in the Blue Book, out of 600, generally they try to take at least 70 or something like that from no EU country. So it's already, like, I know it's a small share, but if you think about the fact that it's European based institution, it's already quite a good shot. Felix, sorry.
I would just add to that it is even possible to still get into these institutions even if you're quite sure that you know nothing about them. Which is sort of my case, where, as I mentioned, the EU was never one of my focuses, and it was really difficult to sort of present a CV or a profile that would be interesting to recruiters for the Commission. But I think it's important to have 2 approaches. One is you've identified one unit in one DG that you absolutely want to go to, and you have experience there, and you understand it, and you can translate that work directly. The second is to be as broad as possible and to make sure that you include as many keywords as you think would fit your profile, would interest different units, which is my case. So my main applications were focused on the European External Action Service, the foreign policy instruments, and the climate action. And in the end, it was DG Home that gave me a call, just because my profile mentioned the word security so many times. And they were quite convinced that I then had experience and understanding in internal security within the Commission, and they called me and they asked me if I was interested and if I knew anything really about internal security, and they were worried that I would say no because I had a more international relations-based profile. To which you can always defend that sort of profile by saying, anything related with the EU is basically international relations, and so you could really just sort of apply your knowledge just on a smaller scale, I would say, within the EU. But I would say don't be afraid of that feeling where you think that if you get chosen, you'll get caught up because they'll find out that you don't know exactly what you're in for. That's really not, they don't really care. They know that you're there as someone who has a lot to learn and will treat you and give you opportunities that are in line with that. So really don't hesitate if you're looking for something for an experience, even if you don't want to stay within the institutions. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And if I can just add something as well, Felix is totally right in the sense that you have many people, they have studied, for example, just like me, because I studied a lot European affairs, but it's not like the only profile that you can find in the EU, because basically they are looking for people that have nice experiences, that can bring new perspectives, new inputs, that can bring something to the organization. So basically, many trainees and many people have nice CVs. They had great experiences in embassies and I don't know what. But you also have people, they only have, for example, they are able to speak a rare language, or not even a rare language, but they're able to, I don't know, to speak many languages at the same time. So it can be an asset. What I meant with this is just that I think that you should focus on your strengths and on what you can show on your skills. For example, even if you did a lot of volunteering, because, for example, one of my best friends, when she applied to the Blue Book, she was not really confident because basically she speaks French and English, which is great, but it's not really, it's common for the EU because many people speak those languages, but also she had like no work experiences. She had just finished her master's, but not with good grades. But she did a lot of volunteering because she was working for the young, I think it's the European Young Professional or something, an organization like this. Basically, they were working on the European Parliament. They were basically working with the members of the parliament, organizing events, promoting the action promoted by the European Parliament and the EU institutions. And she did quite a lot. She traveled a lot with her association. And in the end, she managed to get into the Blue Book just because she had this profile that was really focused on the EU, but not with a lot of work experiences and with a lot of languages or with 3 masters or I don't know what, but she managed to just stress on her skills because she just said that she had organization skills. She was able to do this, and this, and then she got selected in the end. So don't think that you don't have the profile good enough for a traineeship or even a contract in the EU institutions, because you never know. If you want to do it, I would just advise to apply and then you'll see, but just try to be really, to think about your application and to try to make it really personal and to make people understand that this is really what you want, because you will be able to do the job, because in the end, everyone is able to do the job. The AD, so the official of the commission, they started not knowing everything, but then with the career, they change position, they try new digits, new services, new units on different topics. So in the end, they managed to gather a lot of knowledge, but when they started, they didn't know anything about the European institutions as well. So that's why it's also like it's learning by doing, what I meant.
They like sort of quote unquote experts and specific profiles as well. Like a lot of my colleagues are former lawyers or former police officers or just really technical sort of profiles. The commission understands that the commission isn't necessarily the end goal for a lot of people. They just sort of are there because they have expert skills and they know very specific stuff. So microbiologists, for example, are very welcome in the domain because they will have they'll be able to understand the calls for proposals in research programs, and they'll be able to sort through the propositions from research projects that are valid and worth funding and stuff like that. So it really, I think it's worth applying no matter the profile.
Yes, if I can add also about that, and not just about technical profiles, but also like NGO background, volunteering. For example, we had other colleagues that work at the European Commission that before used to work in for NGOs dealing with a humanitarian corridor, just to mention one. Or even myself, when I started working at the Commission as Blue Book, I came with an NGO background in counter trafficking. So you know, every background works, and actually the more practical you are sometimes, the better it is. So as they were saying, don't be afraid if you have volunteer experience, or if you think that your experience, just because maybe they were at national level, they won't count, or they will count less than maybe someone else who has great names in their CV, because it's not often the rule. Actually, as Adrien and Felix were saying, like invest on your skills, because that's what makes you unique, and the more unique you are, actually the better it is, because nowadays let's not lie, we all have incredible academical backgrounds. No matter from which university we are coming, we really have a great academical skills. So it's better to invest in you're interested in what you are more interested in, and then you don't worry, you will find your way through these complicated words, not just in the EU bubble, but in generally, like in the international organization, in NGOs or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, because it's turning into a little bit of a, hey, apply for the Blue Book, and you know, we'll see. But I think what Erica says is probably the crux of what I'm trying to say, and I think Adrien as well, is the main advice I would give is to have a really good think about how you translate your university knowledge into a profile that is going to make you employable. Even if it's, you know, even if it's just a bullshit term, it'll be something that they can, you know, get their hooks in and get them interested, and get you that callback at least. Because I'm very happy to say that even though I haven't been called back for that many interviews, the interviews that I have had, I have been offered the job. And that's because I have I'm able to sort of have a good conversation with people, get a good rapport going, without, you know, tooting my own horn too much. It really is the most difficult thing is getting that sort of experience, getting your personal experiences on paper and having that translate to different companies is probably the most difficult aspect of anything, regardless of your goals.